Hi, welcome to Altenew's July Marvelous Monthly Series Video Hop. I'm Kristin Sluhan with Paper Fiore. Today we're going to be focusing on Altenew's Craft a Flower monthly series as well as their Dynamic Duo monthly series. We're going to start off with the Craft a Flower with the Stargazer lily. Altenew has created a new registration system on all of their dies so that it ensures that you can assemble your flowers absolutely perfectly every time. Now I've already cut out all of my dies in 110-pound cardstock, and I will be using my stamping wheel to hold down all of my dies. It is a wonderful tool so that I don't have to cramp my fingers trying to get the ink on all of these little teeny tiny die pieces. I am using the rose petal color family to ink my flower die pieces. And following the instructions on the back of the packaging, I have collected all of my die pieces according to each of the flowers. And I will be using the Altenew Mini Blending Brush. These are amazing brushes. I recommend them so much. Now, as you can see here, there are two petals for this particular flower that are exactly the same. One of them has a hole in it, although I did not punch it out. It has a little arrow shape, and the other one does not, but it does have some registration marks on it. The one with the arrow shape and it will be covered by the other one, so you don't have to bother inking that one. Now I'm starting off with the rose quartz, and I'm just inking along the centers of these petals because that is how a Stargazer lily looks. And I'm going to use the graduated colors all the way to the darkest color in the color family. Now lilies come in a huge variety of colors, so you can never go wrong when you are inking these with any of the color families. I used to be a florist, and you can trust me, any color will work, even blue. They are absolutely stunning. Now, as I was starting with my final color, the Cosmic Berry, I decided it was a little bit too purple and not very much like the color of a true Stargazer lily flower. So here's my number one tip when it comes to doing any type of shading with your blending brushes. I always have a scrap piece of paper that I wipe off my excess ink onto. I'm sure hundreds of people do this, but this is something that I do every single time. And I save these papers and I do it as I am going through my project. And at the end of this video, you'll see what I do with these papers. Now I decided, instead of using the Cosmic Berry, to move over to a grapevine color because I wanted that deep red color that you see at the throats of the flowers for an actual Stargazer lily. It just really makes it pop. And using all of those graduated colors, it may seem like you're wasting your time, but it really creates a lot of depth in your flower. The wonderful thing also about these blending brushes, since they are small and they have sharp edges, so you can really direct where you want that ink to go and create those creases that you see in a petal. Now I am again wiping it off, and I do it between the changes of the colors. Even though this is still a red type of color, since it's in a different color family, I will go ahead and wipe it off on my scrap paper that I will be saving for the project later. Now it's time to assemble the flowers. Following the instructions that are on the back of the packaging, I will be using liquid adhesive to put these all together. Now, all of the pieces have a registration mark on them. Some of them have arrows, some of them have keyholes. This particular flower has an arrow. And this is the duplicate petal that I was talking about earlier. It also has an arrow. So you will line up the arrows together when you are layering them on top of each other. So once I have glued that down, I will take the duplicate petal and place it on top. Now that duplicate petal also has registration marks for you to be able to place the other two petals on top exactly the way it needs to be, so it will look like an actual Stargazer lily. I know we all have those die cuts in our stash that are kind of hard to put together. So this is what I love about these new systems that Altenew has come up with. It really makes it foolproof, and I'm a bit of a fool, so if it's easy for me, it's easy for anyone. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly zoom through this because I have two cards that I want to do for us today. Now I'm going to be using the Tropical Forest inks to add color to our stamens and our leaves. So I'm starting off with the bamboo just to get a base color down on all of them. And then I will be following up with parrot and finally with moss just to give it some real depth and some texture. Now each of these dyes have some embossed pieces to it as well. A great thing that you could do is use some colored pencils to really highlight all of those things. Now once I have finished that, I am going to again wipe off my blending brushes onto my scrap paper, and I do try to pick up the ink that I have gotten onto my sticky mat on my stamp wheel. The final part of the lily are the stamen pollen pieces, and they are a bright orange color on the flower. You can even add a little red to it. They're really tiny, and that is why this sticky mat is such a wonderful tool to have on hand. You can easily stick them on there, put the color on there, and they won't move anywhere. It's wonderful. I'm again going to take all of the ink off of my blending brushes, also scrape it off of that sticky mat so that I can add it to my scrap paper. Now you get to the end where you are assembling everything on the flowers. The stamen also has the same feature as the one flower that had the extra piece, just so that it ensures that you have your pieces in the correct places. It truly is a foolproof system, and I really love this because I tend to get a little confused. So I will go ahead and complete assembling all of my flowers, and I will leave off the leaves. That way, once I get my card front put together, I can adjust them wherever I want them to be. I also use the trick that Jennifer McGuire uses, and I place them under one of my large acrylic stamp blocks and then put something heavy over it. I don't think she does that, but I do have this wonderful paperweight, so I just do that for myself. Now I'm going to be adding some splatters to the background, which I have actually embossed with the Dotted Waves background embossing die. And you will see here, my splatters get a little crazy and one hit up onto my lens. So I have this little floating orange dot going on in the bottom. It doesn't affect what you can see. It's a little annoying, but I apologize. I then go ahead and just dry it all off, and unfortunately that little dot will stick around with us until the end of the video. I think we'll just call him Fred. So once I have all of my flowers arranged, I will then use some cling wrap to keep my assembly together. The flower that is in the far back, I will glue down with liquid adhesive, and the rest of them I will be using the foam dimensional tape from Altenew. Now I'm going to glue it down with some liquid adhesive and let it sit for a few minutes. That way when I peel up the cling wrap to add foam, it will stay down and I won't have to re-glue it. So while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to go ahead and start adding my sentiment. And I am going to be using the Versatile Greetings die set 2 that came out at the beginning of July, as well as my sentiment strips. I will be using the congrats from the Versatile Greetings die 2, as well as the phrase for the happy couple from the sentiment strips stamp set. I have lots of weddings to go to this summer, so I thought it would be perfect. I used mirror gold cardstock for the congrats word and then used just a plain white shadow background. I did not want to detract from the flowers at all, so I tried to keep it as simple as possible. Now that the background flower has dried, I'm going to set the sentiments aside and I will go ahead and start adding foam tape to the back of the foreground flowers. I love the Altenew tape. I think it's wonderful and it's going to last forever. It's a huge roll. As well as the new scissors that they just came out with at the beginning of this month. They are fantastic. They are sharp and the foam does not stick to it. I mean, truly, they are a gift. I'm using Industrial Diamond Gray ink for part of the sentiment. I like using that color because it's dark enough to show up, but not so intense as black is to detract from anything else that's going on the front of my card. I am adhering the sentiment with some foam tape, and then also I will be gluing down some sequins because I like a little sparkle on the front of my card. All of this is going on an A2 card front base with the fold on the left. I love this card. I think it came out absolutely beautiful. And here are a couple of other cards that I made with the exact same die set using some vellum paper and white cardstock. We will be now moving on to the Dynamic Duo set, Always Smile. It comes with the die set, a stamp set, and the stencils. I will be using the Dotted Waves cover die set as well as the Fine Frames rectangle set. I have cut them out of 4 pieces of cardstock and then did the Dotted Waves on one of them. I'm going to set them aside for now and we'll talk about those later. Now I am going to start off by embossing our image with black embossing powder. I love how it pops off, and I just love doing our blending on top of it with our stencils. Now, I use an old catalog from IKEA for my scrap paper to collect my embossing powder. I know a lot of people use coffee filters. I've never tried that. I think I will have to try that sometime. But the IKEA catalog will work for me until it runs out. So these stencils are really incredibly easy to use, and they are very versatile. What I love about using these stencils with blending brushes is you can add the color anywhere on the flower. It doesn't have to be a solid filled in flower. I am using Buttercream and Coral Bliss crisp dye inks for these flowers, and I'm adding most of the color to the center of the flower, a little bit along the edges. I wanted my flowers to be mostly white, but to have just a little bit of color with them. Now, as I've been doing with all of the projects that I've been working on today, I'm going to clean my brush off on my extra scrap piece of paper. And as you can see here, it is filling in very quickly. And I'm taking the ink off of the stencils because I hate wasting anything. So I will pull the ink off of the outside of those stencils and put it on my scrap paper as well. Now let's move on to the leaves for the flower. I am using bamboo and parrot inks, and I will actually finish with the 3rd layer of stencils with fresh green ink. I just like the variety as opposed to just keeping it all in the same color family. When you mix it up a little bit, it just kind of makes it pop a little bit more. Once I have my foliage finished, I will go ahead and wipe off my blending brush on my scrap paper, and I will go ahead and make all my die cuts so that I can assemble my card. Now that all of them have been cut out, I will set them aside and I will put together my card front now. Now, all of my A2 pieces of cardstock were cut in the center with the Fine Frames rectangle die. I'm gluing them all together to keep the centers all lined up, not the outsides. And then I will trim the outsides so that it's a 1/4 inch smaller than an A2 card front. The 4th piece is embossed with the Dotted Waves cover die. I will use this assembled piece on the front of a card base so that I can glue the center that I cut out with the rectangle die and glue that to the card base and set that aside. The sentiment is heat embossed with black embossing powder, and that is also from the stamp set. Now it's time to assemble the card. I'm adding the frame to the front, and I will arrange the flowers on how I think it looks the best. I've decided on an diagonal arrangement because I feel that it is more pleasing to the eye. The sentiment will be trimmed as well as some of the leaves to really fit into that diagonal layout. To ensure nothing moves, I will again be using the Press and Seal cling wrap to hold everything in place, and I will add everything onto the front of my card with some liquid adhesive as well as some foam dimensional tape from Altenew. I'm going to finish my card off with some enamel glue that I have on hand. It's black. I would actually prefer to use the stickers because these can smear very quickly. So I plan on investing on some of the Altenew enamel dots very, very soon. Here is our completed card, as well as a second one that I use the same techniques of blending brushes and stencils. Now remember that piece of cardstock we created? I added it to the background of this card. The images were stamped on vellum paper with white embossing powder, and the stencils were used on the back side of the vellum to give it a soft look. Thank you again for joining me today for Altenew's Marvelous Monthly Series Video Hop. I appreciate you being here, and I hope you subscribe. I hope you were also inspired and you visit everyone else along the hop. So thanks again from me and Fred for joining us, and if you need more inspiration, visit paperfiore.blogspot.com or see me on Instagram at Kristin Sluhan.